Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Boris TV tutorial. And in this lesson, I am excited to be able to demo for you the new BCC 10 for AVX, that is of course for Avid Media Composer from Boris Effects. Now in this lesson, I'm going to take an overview look at the new effects in the package, including reframer, remover, video glitch, light leaks, fast lens blur, dropout fixer, beauty studio, and of course Title Studio. And when we're done, you're going to see the leaps and bounds that have been made by the development team working on BCC 10 since it was first shown off at NAB 2015. And the best part is that if you're watching this tutorial, BCC 10 AVX is available right now from the Boris Effects store. Okay, let's get started by talking about the dropout fixer effect. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Avid Media Composer, obviously, and Alt and Tab for my Windows friends out there. Now, one thing that you're going to hear me refer to a lot of in this tutorial, and it's going to be kind of a running theme in this tutorial in general, is that even though we are talking about BCC 10, an effects package, a lot of these effects are actually going to become essential tools that you're going to use. They're going to help you fix common problems that you might run into in the edit suite. Now, this is a perfect one for all of you documentary editors out there who are going to find themselves using a lot of archival footage, especially coming from a format like Betacam SP, where dropouts can be a very common thing. There you go. There's a big, huge dropout right there. Okay. Now, in most cases, what editors would do is they would just leave this, and they would just say, well, this footage is old. There's not much that I can do about it. But believe it or not, inside of BCC 10, this is actually a very easy problem to fix. What we're going to do is we're going to park ourselves right on top of the frame that is the issue. I'm going to come into the effects palette by hitting Command and 8 on the Mac control and 8 on Windows. And I'm going to head on down to, of course, the image restoration section, because that is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be restoring this image, trying to get the image back here where this dropout is happening. And you can actually find the dropout fixer effect located right here. Now, it is not a real-time effect, but that's okay. This effect renders super fast. What we're going to do, simply take the effect, I'm going to drag it and drop it down onto the shot, and I'm going to step into effects mode, my shortcut Shift and Y on the keyboard. Now the first thing that the effect needs me to do is to tell it what pixel, or what frame in this case, do we want to fix. Now in this case, it's actually the frame that I'm parked on, so most people think that you're going to have to enter a value or something like that. I actually don't even need to do that. I'm just going to mark the start frame by simply hitting the start frame button right here. You'll see that it immediately updates and knows that it's frame 10. You'll see it's frame 10 right up here, and we're on field number 1. You'll see that, of course, I need to know that because it wants to know what field the dropout is on right there. It also wants to know how long the length of the dropout is. We're going to leave that on its default for right now. And what I need to do now is I just need to zoom back a little bit just to see the area where the dropout is going to be happening. Now, in this case, the dropout fills the entire frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the dropout to be the whole frame by simply setting the range just like such. Now all I need to do is simply come down to the preview, and you'll see right now it's set to see the original field, but I could say show me, the dropout field, right here. I could say that, to set the replacement field, the output field, or I could just set this to be output. Now the funny thing is, as soon as I set this to be output, the screen actually turns red. Now why is that? Because right now the effect is actually set to replace whatever's there with color. Now I don't want to do that. What I would like to do is to decide whether I want this to be the nearest field forward or the nearest field backward. Now the only problem is that the next field actually has a dropout on it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this with the nearest field going backwards, and as soon as I do, that dropout disappears. Now you'll see that if I go through to the next field here, there we go, boom, or the next frame, there we go. There's another big huge dropout hit there. So what I need to do is get in and fix this as well. Now the easiest way to do that is to simply drop another instance of the effect right down on top. I'm simply going to hold Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, just like such. And again, we're just going to set the range of the dropout, which is about here. There we go. That's pretty good. And we're just going to do the exact same technique again. I'm going to come down. I'm going to set the frame, which is going to be, of course, frame 11 on field 1. You'll see we're on field 1. Right now the preview is set to be the original field. We're just going to switch that to be, of course, the output. Immediately I'm going to see red. Now this is actually very handy because right now it's completely blocking out the dropout, which tells me that I'm actually, in good shape to remove this by simply coming down and replacing it with the nearest field moving forward like such. And guess what I've now just done? I've taken a shot with a seemingly huge and ugly dropout on it, and I've gotten rid of it altogether. And to be honest, you would never have even known that that was there like that. Okay, so let's move on, and I'm actually going to switch projects here so we can talk about the next effect that we're going to look at inside of BCC 10. Okay, so we're back in our progressive project from our interlace project where I was showing you the dropout fixer. So let's move on and talk about, again, another tool that you're going to have at your disposal. Now, this is a great tool, especially in the world of video today. One thing is that drives all editors, and a lot of people in general crazy, is the dreaded vertical video. Now, the team at Boris FX knows that you're going to run into this situation, probably a few times, especially if you work on longer format stuff. You're going to need to get in. You don't want to have the vertical video with the black pillar box. And what you want to do is get in and stylize this up a little bit. So let's do that right now. What I'm going to do, again, I'm going to call up the effects palette, Command and 8 on the Mac, Control and 8 on Windows. Let's come back to image restoration. And what we want to do is we want to get in and we want to use the reframer effect right here. All I'm going to do is simply take reframer. I'm going to drag it and drop it down onto my shot. Now, what's important to keep in mind about a shot like this is that this is something that is relatively, I'll say, easy to get in and to fix manually. Now, just because I say that it's easy doesn't mean that it's not time consuming, because it is very time consuming. If I wanted to get in and stylize this up, what I would do is I would crop this image out, then I would take this, I'd duplicate it, I'd scale it up, I'd get in, I'd find some effects to get in, stylize it up a little bit so that I could put basically my vertical video on top of a stylized, alternate version of the same video. Well, guess what? I can do all of that inside of one effect, inside of the reframer effect. Let me show you how simple it is. What I'm going to do is simply step into effects mode. I'm just going to zoom back in on my shot right here. The first thing I need to do is get in and set up the foreground. And what I want to do is set my crop up first. So let's do that. All I'm going to do is come to the foreground setup. I'm going to twirl that down. And let's crop the width of my vertical video here. As I start to drag, you're going to notice that it's going to crop this right in. And it's going to create a mirror of this zoomed in the background, just like that. Now I can almost already be done with this. I do have some other options in here where I can get in and adjust things like the video interpolation. I can rotate this video if it happened to come in the wrong way. Sometimes you'll see iPhones do that. They'll actually take the vertical video and put it the wrong way, and you can actually just get in and quickly rotate the image if you wanted to. Now obviously I don't need to for the purposes of what we're doing, but what I can also do is get in and adjust things like scale. I'm just going to undo that. You'll see that was the scale. I can get in and adjust scale X, Y separately. That was a scale for both. What I can also do is get in and adjust the position and even the rotation. What I can also do is twirl this down. I can get in and adjust some foreground transforms. You'll see the foreground scale master post, which is after I've already got this set up. We can adjust our image if I wanted to shrink it down a little bit. I could even get in, just adjust the X, Y scale manually. I can even adjust the position like this, which is very cool. But what I like to do is get in and adjust some foreground effects, like for example to add a drop shadow just to have it stand out a little bit from my background. Now, what's great about this effect is that in most cases you could leave this just the way it is. I could come back here to the beginning, simply hit play. There we go, it's playing in real time. But maybe in this situation we're actually talking about this mountain. I wanted to put some information here on the right hand side. No problem. All I have to do is simply come into my foreground, into my post position. I can adjust the frame like such. So now conceivably I could put some information about this mountain peak right here on the right hand side. So a very great way to quickly get in and adjust this vertical video issue literally in a matter of seconds, instead of the time consuming process of having to create multiple layers to achieve the same effect. I literally did this with one effect in about maybe 20 seconds. Okay, so let's move on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close the effects editor here. Let's come in and let's talk about a fast lens blur next. What I'm going to do is simply double click on my fast lens blur here. And what we want to do is we want to simulate a blur where we can actually see the lens of the camera. Now this is an effect I see used all of the time in shows like Law and Order. I've seen it done in House of Cards. I've even seen it done in Suits. And to do this effect, what I'm going to do is, again, effects palette, we're going to come to the blur category of BCC, and I'm going to come right down here to fast lens blur right there. I'm simply going to take fast lens blur, drag and drop it onto my shot. Now most people think, well Kev, that's just a regular blur. There's nothing really too fancy about what you've just done. What I'm going to do is simply step into effects mode here. And what I want to do is actually get a little bit of a better look at what's going on with the lens. I'm going to change my quality from fast to sharper. Okay. Once I do that, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to adjust the scale of my lens. Now you can start to see the actual shape of the lens right here. But to see it a little bit better, I'm actually going to come down to the highlights, and I'm just going to boost the highlights a little bit. And that's why I chose this shot in particular. Just crank it up a little bit. Now we can actually see the shape of the lens. You'll see that if I come back to the iris right here, that this is a 6-sided iris. Now the easiest way for me to show you what the lens actually looks like is to simply change that to a triangle, just like such. Now in most cases you're not going to find a lens that's a triangle, but you get where I'm going with this. This is how you can easily see what the lens looks like. Now most commonly, what you'll sort of see on the Law and Orders is a 6-sided or 8-sided lens, something that looks a little bit like that. Okay? We also have the ability to get in and do some post things like use a transfer mode on this. And of course we can get in and do geometrics where we can get in and adjust scales and things like that. Okay? But really at its core, this is the type of effect that we want to achieve. And again, like I said, keep your eyes open on shows like Law and Order and Suits. And when they shoot shots at night, you're definitely going to see a lens blur effect. And getting in and creating the same effect that you see on those high-end TV shows is very quick and very simple inside of BCC 10. Okay. So let's move on here and let's talk about another great tool. You'll see that right now we've talked about 3 tools so far. We're going to talk about Remover now. I'm simply going to double click on Remover. Now most people take a look at a shot like this and be like, well Kev, what would you use a remover effect for in a shot like this? Well, you know what? We've got this really ugly panel that's hanging off the wall right here. You know, and I could even get in and remove this panel here. We could even get in and get really fancy and start removing windows if we wanted to. But let's start, we'll just talk about basics here because this is, again, an overview lesson. And what I want to do is I just want to remove this sort of panel that's falling off the wall here. So how would I go about doing that? What I'm going to do, Command and 8 on the Mac control and 8 on Windows. We're going to come back down to image restoration, and I'm simply going to use the remover effect. Now, again, this is not a real-time effect, but that's okay. It renders super quick. Now, as soon as I take the effect and I drag it and drop it onto the shot, you're going to notice that something has appeared. What I'm going to do is just step into effects mode. I'm just going to bypass the effect just for one quick second. Okay? You'll see that as I turn the effect on and off, you'll notice that something has appeared right here, but we actually have 2 crosshairs, one right here and one right here. And you'll see that as I hover over top of them, one is called the source, one is called the destination. Now this is a very, very clever effect, and if you know anything about Photoshop, you know about the clone tool in Photoshop where you can pick a point in your image and you can clone it to somewhere else. Well, that's basically what we're going to do right here. We're going to do a clone. Okay, I'm just going to zoom in, but just by hitting on my zoom tool here, I'm just going to adjust the frame here by hitting Command and Option on the Mac, Control and Alt on Windows. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the area that we want to be the source for our clone. I'm just going to pick right about here now. As soon as I move the source and let go, it's immediately going to be updated in the destination. Okay. Now we might be a little bit too close to the edge, so let me just bring this over a little bit, just like such. So all we have is the wall. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is take the destination, move it right over like such. Let's just sort of line up because we want to make sure that line goes right across. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to twirl down my clone here because I need to get in and do a little bit of a feather. Now what I'm also going to do is just adjust the radius a little bit. Let's bring it down. Let's put it at about 15. Now of course I'm going to have to move this over a little bit, and that's okay. Just to make sure we cover up the wall. And guess what we've just about done? I might need to give it a little bit more of a feather. Let's give it a feather of about 8. That might be a little bit too much. Let's go back to about 6.5. There we go. And all I'm going to do is step out of the effect, and you can see now that that little blemish is now completely gone. Okay. Now we could do this again right over here, and all we'd have to do is, much like in Dropout Fixer, is just double the effect up, and we can easily get in and remove these panels from the wall. We could even get in and do things like removing these windows if we wanted to, all using this one effect. A very cool idea. Again, I use this all the time in Photoshop, and once I saw this effect, I was like, man, I can't believe, that we haven't had this effect up till now. But now, guess what? Inside of BCC 10, we now have this effect at our disposal. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk about 2 more stylistic effects. Now, I've sort of tied the 2 of these together. They don't really go together, but sort of in the idea of them, they do. Now, this is sort of a situation where I find myself going to third-party QuickTime elements all the time to create these type of looks. One is a video glitch and the other is a light leak. So let me show you how simple it is to get in and create these inside of BCC 10. So why don't we start with video glitch? Again, we're going back to the effects palette, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down to stylize. You'll see video glitch right down here. We have video glitch and we have video glitch real time. What I'm going to do is simply select the real time effect. I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it and drop it right down onto my shot. Now, as soon as I do, you'll see that as I start to drag backwards, the video glitch has appeared on the screen. Now, one thing that I want to draw your attention to, I mentioned before about the using QuickTime elements to create an effect like this. The difference between using QuickTime elements and using BCC's video glitch is take a look at what's happening. The video is actually being moved and torn to pieces. Take a look. Look at the shift that happens right here. You can see the video is actually being torn, which you would not get with a third-party QuickTime element. And of course I can come back, simply hit play here. There we go, there's some glitches happening. Now where this effect really shines, and this goes the same with light leaks as well, is using the built-in FX browser. What I'm going to do is step into effects mode. I'm going to navigate up to the FX browser right here. I'm simply going to click on it. The FX browser is going to open up, and what I'm now going to have is a whole bunch of different presets that I can simply select. I can hit play on the keyboard. There we go. Now I'll just give it a little bit more room to preview that here. There we go. But of course we can pick any one of these. Take a look at that. And the best part is that, you know, whether we find one that we like or whether we build one ourselves, if we build one ourselves, we can save it. And of course that will be added to the FX browser for us to then utilize in future projects. Okay, so I'm just going to choose this one. I'm simply going to say apply. Let's just zoom back here because I'd zoomed in for the effect before. There we go. Okay, and again, real time, I could simply come back, hit the space bar. Now one thing I do want to point out, if you happen to watch the demo that I did at NAB that had video glitch in it, the one thing that it didn't have was the ability to get in and make it an intermittent glitch. Well, the team of course obviously knew that, and is now, as you can see, included the ability to get in and not only create some really ugly looking video, which is exactly what we want for this effect, but you'll see that if I step into effects mode, we can actually get in and adjust not only the glitch interval, but the interval randomness as well. So you can really get in and tailor this effect exactly the way that you want. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that effect. Of course, when we're talking about light leaks, we of course want to come to the BCC lights category, and you'll find light leaks right here. Of course, again, real-time effect. I'm simply going to take, drag and drop onto my shot, and boom, there we go. Literally there right away. Hit the space bar. Now again, where this effect of course shines as well is not only in the absolutely staggering amount of parameters that you can get in and adjust, everything from color to position to scale to blur to amplitude, but of course we can again come into the FX browser and have access to a whole bunch of fantastic light leaks presets that will ship with BCC 10, and of course you can get in and create your own. Again, you want to see any one of these, you can simply select it, hit the space bar on the keyboard. It's going to go through. Now you'll notice that it's not going to play back in real time right now because it's buffering this into your system's RAM, and now it's going to play it back in real time. And of course, again, if we're happy with this, we can simply come in and say apply, and boom, that's applied right away. I can now simply jump right back to the beginning, hit the space bar, and there's the light leak effect. We're ready to go. Okay, so let's move on. I'm just going to close the effects palette again. Let's talk about a big one. Now this is a big effect for a couple reasons inside of BCC. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to call up my timeline for Beauty Studio. Okay. Now Beauty Studio is a great effect, and this is an effect that's actually a welcome addition to BCC 10 for AVX, because in a lot of cases, you know, now with us moving to larger than HD, you know, resolutions, we can see detail, a lot of detail, and in some cases, whether it's a bad makeup job or whether we can just see too much detail in your talent's face, sometimes you need to get in and beauty it up or clean it up. And that's where Beauty Studio comes into play. Now, Beauty Studio is, again, like I said, a welcome addition for the effect, but also for what the effect brings with it. And what it brings with it is a huge step forward for Media Composer editors, and that is the integrated mocha tracking that's included in the pixel chooser of BCC 10. Now, I mentioned it specifically inside of Beauty Studio, but what's important to keep in mind is that the mocha integration is included in the pixel chooser, which the pixel chooser is integrated in almost every effect inside of Boris Continuum Complete. So yes, conceivably you have the ability to get in and utilize mocha tracking when it comes to masking for specific parts of the effect across almost every effect inside of BCC. Now let me show you how it's going to work inside of Beauty Studio. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call up Beauty Studio. Again, you're going to find it in Image Restorations, located right at the top here. I'm simply going to drag and drop just like such. Now as soon as I do this, you'll see that we actually already have some beauty going on here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to step into effects mode. I'm just going to bypass the effect, and you can see There's what it looked like before, there's what it looks like afterwards. Now the question, of course, is what is the effect actually doing? Well, if you come down to the pixel chooser section, the pixel chooser is on by default in this effect because in most cases you're going to need to get in and tell the effect what you want the beauty portion of the effect to be applied to. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to twirl down the pixel chooser section. I'm going to twirl down the pixel chooser mask / mocha and the matte section. Okay. Now what I want to do is see exactly what are the chosen pixels, what is being affected in this shot. Okay. Now anything that's white is being affected, anything that's black is not. Now to be honest, the background's white, so it doesn't really matter for the purposes of what we're doing. But what's going on here is that you'll see right down here that the mocha pixel chooser, or pardon me, the pixel chooser, not the mocha pixel chooser, is using a key, and the colors that it's actually using is these two colors right here, which is what is determining what is making our mask or our matte element here. So of course anything that falls into these two ranges of colors is going to turn white in our matte, which is what is going to be affected. Now that's all fine and good, but let's just say hypothetically that I only wanted certain parts of this shot to be affected by Beauty Studio. Well, this is where mocha tracking comes into play. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come right back up to the top here. I'm going to turn the mocha pixel chooser on here, and we're going to do this in conjunction with our key elements here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head north a little bit to launch mocha. Now what's important to keep in mind, now you'll see that right away the effect has said, well, hang on a second, you're not at full resolution right down here. So of course the tracking at reduced resolution can be faster but less accurate. So we want it to be as accurate as possible. So let's just go into high quality here. And again, I'm going to launch mocha. Now what's important to keep in mind is that you do not need you don't already need to own mocha for this to actually work exactly the way that I'm showing it to you. This mocha tracker is built in to BCC. Now what I want to do is I want to isolate her forehead and her two cheeks here. Now I could get in and really be specific about what I want to isolate, but I'm only going to want the pixel chooser to look at this area, her forehead, two cheeks here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get in and I'm going to tell mocha that I want you to track what's going on like such, and we're just going to again create another one here just around her cheeks. Now again, I'm not being very precise, but that's okay. You get the idea of how this is going to work, okay? Just like such, okay? So I've made my shapes, and all I'm going to do now is simply say track. And you're going to see that mocha is going to cruise along, and it's going to track these areas pretty dead on. Now what I should actually do here is I'm just going to stop this. Let's just come back to the beginning here, because I'm choosing 90% of the pixels, which of course is going to take a longer track. Let's change that to be 30% of the pixels. And let's just make sure that I do that with each one of my elements here. Because of course mocha's tracking all of these at the same time. So we're going to set all these to 30. There we go. Okay. And again, I'm just going to set the track to go. Now you're going to see the track is going to start cruising along here. And it's going to do a pretty good job. Now of course if the track is not as accurate as you want, you can of course get in and change the minimum percentage of pixels used. I normally stick with about 30 when I'm doing my initial track. You can actually even see that as she winked, you could see the spline actually move, and it's creating a pretty rock solid tracker. And I'm just going to let it track through. This is of course 1080p 23976 footage, full resolution. This is actually linking to the footage on my hard drive. Okay, so this is actually very impressive. Okay, and what I'm going to do is when it's done, I don't need to render anything. I don't need to do anything other than to simply close mocha. It's going to ask me if I want to save, and I'm going to say yes. What I'm going to do is once it's done, I'm going to close, I'm going to say save, and what's going to be updated is right here. Now if I turn this off, I'm just going to turn this off for a second, and I turn this back to be, let's come back up here, to be the chosen pixels. It's going to show me everything because it's relying right down here on this key. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a shape in here, and that shape is going to be the mocha spline. And there is the exact position that I tracked inside of mocha. Now it's going to be the only thing that's affected when I change the mocha spline, or pardon me, when I turn the pixel chooser right here back to just be on. What I'm going to do is just zoom in just to show you that if I come up here and I bypass the effect and I turn it back on, you'll see that the only area that's being impacted is her forehead and her cheeks. Now, of course, I could also come in and just feather this up a little bit. Let's just make the feather about 10. And I'm just going to switch the pixel chooser back to be show chosen pixel, so you can see that we've blurred this out a little bit. If I switch this back to be nothing here, there you go. Put this back to 10. And this is a massive step forward for Media Composer editors. Now we have finite control over exactly what we want to have our effects impact in our shots. If you have somebody, let's say, ride by the shot on a bicycle and you only want to have that person, isolated by whatever the effect is that you're doing, you can simply get in and use the pixel chooser just to track them, and then the effect will only be applied to them in your timeline. A huge leap forward. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk about the second last thing. I'm actually going to throw a little bonus in at the end, but we're going to talk about the second last thing, and this is another big step forward. And of course, I'm talking about Title Studio. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to call up Title Studio, and once I have it called up here, you'll see that I've just chosen a shot of a man sitting at a computer, and I'm going to come into effects mode here, or pardon me, to the effects palette by hitting Command and 8. Let's navigate up to 3D objects where Title Studio is located right here. I'm simply going to take Title Studio, drag and drop it down onto my shot. Let's step into effects mode, Shift and Y, and I'm simply going to navigate up to launch Title Studio UI. Once I have Title Studio open, what I want to do is just make sure that any of my titling is going to happen over top of the actual video. Now, until I put an element into my timeline here, we're not going to see the video, but we're going to do that right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by bringing in a true 3D model. I'm simply going to navigate down to Imported Model, and I'm going to choose this 3.5-inch floppy disk. I'm simply going to say Open. And what's going to happen is that Title Studio is going to bring in this true 3D element. Now, of course, you can just ignore the white background here. There we go. That's the proper background. And you can see now that right now I can get in and adjust the position of this 3D element. It doesn't really look too 3D though. Well, that's because I do have the ability to come in, switch over to my rotation interactor, and now I can rotate this in true 3D space, and you can see that it is actually a real 3D model. Okay? Now, what we want to do is we want to set up a title to go with this floppy disk. I'm just going to undo what I did just to set everything back to its default. And let's put in some 3D extruded text. We're just simply going to add the extruded text by simply clicking on extruded text. Now, Boris Effects is not what we want. What I'm going to do is get in and I'm going to type in, let's type in floppy disk. Why not? Okay. Just like such. And let's center this up. And once we have it centered up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to Impact, the font Impact. There we go. And let's just reposition this text. Now, I think what I'm going to do is just adjust the tracking a little bit here, just to space out my letters a little bit. And I'm going to come back to the controls, and let's just put our Z position, I don't know, let's see. It's not in the positive, it's in the negative. So let's just jump down to like maybe -10. Now, the only thing is I don't really know where this text is sitting in relationship to the floppy disk. Like if I was to put this value at, let's just say -50, I still don't really have a good idea until I get in and make sure that I have the 3D container selected. And of course, once I rotate this, you can actually see that by getting in and adjusting the floppy disk text, I can actually position it really in 3D space. And I can even have it go behind the disk just like that. Okay. Now, I don't want it to be too far away from the disk. Now, of course, the lights are sitting over here, and that's really for a different lesson. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to back up for a second. I'm just going to undo what I just did here, just to put everything back just like such. I want to get in and just adjust the color of floppy disk. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to twirl that down here, and let's come in and let's adjust our color. Okay. What I'm going to do is inside of the material tab, you'll see that the materials are set to be one material. I could change that to be a material for each of the front, the back, the extrusion, and the bevel if I wanted to. But for right now, I'm happy with that the way that it is. So let's just twirl down our front material. Let's come to color. Let's come to our attributes. And I just want to change the diffuse color to be like blue. Why blue? Well, because I just like blue. There we go, looking very nice. Now again, I'm just going to position this a little bit farther away from the text because I want to show you one last thing before I save this out. What I'm going to do is, maybe we'll even leave it at 50. I'm going to get in and I'm going to add a deformer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add bend, taper, twist. Now, as soon as I add bend, taper, twist, I can now get in and actually bend this text. Now, I'm not going to bend it too much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in conjunction with the Z position. Let's put the Z position at like -100 just to space this even farther. Maybe we'll go even a little bit farther, not too far, just because I really want to bend this whole floppy disk here. So let's come back into our bend, taper, twist here, and let's give it a little bit more of a bend, kind of like that. And what I'm going to do with this 3D container is I'm just going to reposition it in 3D space a little bit. We're just going to move it back just so the light shines on it a little bit better. And you'll see now that if I come back into my rotation interactor and I rotate this, that this is actually bent in 3D space around that floppy disk. Now what I think I'm going to do here is just, of course, again, select floppy disk. And let's come back, and that's a little bit too far. Let's go minus 200. I just want to make sure that it's not going to get cropped off by the edge of my model here. And let's just put our rotation here on the main container back to 0. Just like such. And now, of course, what we can do is we can get in and do a little bit of an animation with this. Just like such. We'll have it maybe start over here. Down at the end here, we're going to have it rotate back the other way. Kind of like this. Okay. So that over time, it's going to do our little move here. And all I'm going to do now is simply say apply. And what's going to happen is in a second, that title is going to appear in my timeline in true 3D space, looking really, really cool. Okay, now the last thing that I did want to mention is there are a few new transitions that are new into BCC 10, and I'm just going to call up my transitions timeline here because I figured that instead of going through each one, I would actually put them into a timeline. We're going to hit play here and I'm going to show them to you. Now the first one we have is a cross glitch dissolve, very cool. The next one that we have is a cross melt dissolve. We now have a cross zoom dissolve. Following that up with a lens blur dissolve, and last but certainly not least, to round out the 5 new transitions, we have the light leaks dissolve. Very nice. Okay, so that rounds out our look at all of the new effects inside of BCC 10 for AVX. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that I've shown you the new effects, but there are so many new under the hood features that the team at Boris FX has been working on to improve the effects we already have and to enhance the performance of the actual effects package itself inside of Media Composer. Now, for more information and to purchase Boris Continuum Complete 10, you can simply head on over to the store at the Boris FX website at www.borisfx.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.